let's make something. Today we're modifying another birdhouse from the Dollar Tree. This one's a little different from the one that I got last time. Again, using a heat gun to get rid of those pegs and to remove the base. Because of course I'm going to put a light inside. Yep, one of those electric tea lights, also from the dollar store. And punching out the wood with my drill, which isn't the most effective method, but it's the best I have. And using the sanding wheel to make those cuts nice and smooth. I decided this one was going to have all round windows, more of a fantasy look. And that dollar store foam board again, which comes with paper on both sides, but I'm discarding that. I'm cutting out templates for all four sides. I decided this time to bevel the edges. You can see I'm doing that here at, roughly a 45-degree angle so that the pieces of foam can meet. You'll see that a little later. And I'm painting the roof with just some brown acrylic. It's going to be covered with twigs. You probably saw the thumbnail. So I'm not being super careful here. I just want to get a brown base coat down. And I'm covering up those windows with some parchment paper. This just to help diffuse the light, and so that you can't see inside and see that it's just a battery-powered tea light in there. And now I am embossing stones into this foam. And I'm just using a embossing tool or a ball stylus. And the foam's very easy to indent, so this is an easy process. I looked up a bunch of pictures of stone buildings to figure out what I wanted to do for this. And I'm using a needle tool to make sure the stones look like they're three-dimensional. They go into the edge of the window frame. And then I'm just sealing things with black acrylic and Mod Podge. And here I've got some more of those laser cut chipboard pieces, also from the Dollar Tree. And I decided to cut out the center of these star shapes to be the round windows. And they came out a little rough, so I'm sanding them, which you have to do very carefully because it's just chipboard, it's just cardboard. They will fray very easily, so you can only sand them lightly. And I decided all the metal on this house I wanted to be copper or bronze rather than iron or something silvery. I thought it would be interesting. So I'm just using some bronze acrylic paint there. Now the reason I sealed the window and door edges here was because I wanted to attach the foam to the house before I'd finished carving all the bricks into it, because I want the ones at the corners to match up. So it's a bit of a puzzle to try to figure out what to do at which stage. I think in retrospect I didn't really need to seal those edges with that black paint Mod Podge. Here's a test I did, because I want to use gold charms in this miniature, but I want them to look like copper. So I tried with enamel paints, which stick better to metal than acrylic does. I tried to see what would be the best method, and the third one there, you can see, is a green base coat, like verdigris, with a copper colored dry brush over top to be the highlighted points, and I thought that looked the best of the different methods I tried. So I'm going to do that on these gold charms. Getting everything stuck down. When you're trying to paint small things, it's really a lifesaver to have a tongue depressor with some double-sided tape on it. And this is enamel paint in white, green, and blue. I'm coating these thoroughly. The other tests I did were a copper base and then a light green over top, and then I did black with copper and green, and neither of those really looked as much like copper, or I guess I really should say bronze, as the third one did. So went with the third one. Here I'm just cleaning up the edges of the foam, and then I'm embossing all the way around. You notice this in real stone buildings, but they often have more deliberate large squares around the corners to be load-bearing stones. So those are more rectangular shaped. And then everything in between, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Some thin stones going vertically or horizontally, different shapes of rounded stones. And I'm basing everything in just a gray acrylic. I thought about dry brushing this and leaving the black showing between the stones, but I decided against that, although that would be a nice look too. And then I wanted it to be a little interesting, so I mixed a little bit of green in with the gray, and then there's also blue there and purple, and I'm just hitting random stones all over with those colors. It's quite subtle on camera. It's a little more noticeable in real life, but I do like that they're not candy colored, they're sort of shades of gray. And the whole house has sort of a blue-green overall aesthetic. Using some hot glue to attach that tealight. And mixing some very bright green paint with a little bit of ochre so that it becomes a more natural grassy color. For the base, you won't see much of the base, it's just a tiny edge around the building. Matching it up to my fake grass there. I did a pretty good job. And just covering everything with green. Like the roof, this will be covered with something over top of it, so it doesn't have to be perfect, and I didn't bother putting a base coat down. Now I'm using some watered down mint green acrylic paint to be the verdigris on the bronze here. And I'm mixing some enamel gold paint with enamel red to make that copper color so I can dry brush. I tried to hit the highest points of these charms and then just sort of random spots, which I think worked pretty well. Dry brushing the stones with some white. Try to make them look a little more weathered. And then fixing up the roof after that. I'm not too concerned with the lines being perfectly smooth. You won't really see these edges, but I just want to cover up any big blotches. And fitting the windows in place. And for the small windows on the front and back, I wanted a stained glass look. So I mixed some blue-green decorating powder into some clear resin for the star in the center. And then it's clear all around. And then I sanded the back so that it would look frosted. Help diffuse the light a little more. This technique for stained glass worked pretty well. I think it would be better if I'd used the whole shapes so I didn't have to worry about the edges, but I needed a certain size. And now I'm making a door with just cardstock, and then on top of that wooden coffee stirrers. I tried to leave the center slightly open there, you can see, so it's meant to be the division between two doors, but I don't think it really shows up in the end. It's too small. Painting the wood dark, and then because the wood's so thin, you can just cut it with scissors. Sand it, make sure it's nice and smooth. And then I'm just using some more good old PVA craft glue to glue the charms in place. Originally, I wanted to have the top of the door to have cutouts so you'd see the light from inside through it, but I realized the cutouts would have to be so small, and the wooden stir sticks, they're not the best quality wood, so I think they would probably just splinter. So I decided not to. But I wanted this whole cottage to have a astronomy sort of look to it. You can see I picked out star designs for the windows, and here it's all stars and moons. These nice sun charms around the door pulls, which are just little rings I made out of copper wire. And now the roof. This, also from the Dollar Tree, is a cinnamon broom, which were half price after Christmas, which is a nice surprise. I don't love that they smell like cinnamon, but they're already fading, so that's okay. Here I'm using some super glue because I knew these fibers would fight me, these little twigs. So I knew I would need something to grab them while I press them down. This was kind of tricky. It was a bit like trying to put doll hairs on a doll, where you have to sort of go in layers. So after the base layer all the way around, I went back and added another layer using the craft glue, the PVA glue. And then I'm using some wire cutters to give it a trim. Time to attach the door. The nice thing about the foam is if it's in the way, you can just take a tool and sort of press it back a little bit, and it'll give you some wiggle room. Just using some super glue to attach the base. I didn't talk about the chimney, but that is just foam, just 4 layers of foam stacked up. And now I'm using the dust from a bag of dollar store moss to make miniature moss for the side of this house. This is just some watered down craft glue. And I put it sort of along the edges of the building, at the corners and below the windows and around the steps by the door, places that I thought dirt and moisture would accumulate. It's basically the same as applying glitter. And now I'm trying something new to me. This is static grass, which comes with an applicator that's battery powered, so it makes a slight static charge. And you just shake these little grass fibers all over glue. And because they have that static charge, they stand up on end, so they look like real growing grass. I love the effect. Here I'm using some miniature grass tufts. Army Painter, I believe is the name of the company for these. And I just cut one in half to be 2 tufts of grass by the door. And I wanted this wizard, this mage, to have a sign out front to let you know what their services are. So I have some copper wire and beads and a glass teardrop with a sort of rainbow backing, and then this moon face, this blue moon face, which I really like. So I'm just adding some beads to the wire, twisting them around. I made this little curly Q out of thicker wire to be sort of the bracket to hang the sign from on the front of the building. Well, that's it. I'll leave you with some final shots, and thank you for watching. Happy New Year!